Mr. Joe Johnson. Sir, you're welcome. Happy Easter celebration to you.
Good morning to you, Andrew. Good morning to Rivers people.
All right, it's been a while we spoke with you. It's great to have you.
You had already put the prefix suspended, so when you're on suspension, you stay away.
Well, regardless, we're excited that you are joining us for the Easter celebration at work.
Yes. Happy Easter to Rivers people and our listeners.
Well, today we're going to be having a conversation around a few things, one of which would be a comment that has been on for quite a while and then was restated by the FCT minister in his media chat. And that is that the president, Rivers people should be grateful to the president because the emergency rule was how the president saved the governor from being impeached. And now that has been said quite a number of times, but then most recently was said again by the FCT minister. And this, of course, has caused a split argument on all over various social media platforms. Some of the opinion that, well, they might have a point when they say that, but the others of the opinion that, well, it still doesn't add up. Possibly the emergency rule is an alternative to the impeachment that couldn't have worked. Well, all of these debates have been going on back and forth. And we're going to have that conversation today and also look into so far what's been happening with regards to the local governments and the appointments of the local government sole administrators. All of those forms the conversation this morning. We need you to get on social media and be part of it at Nigeria Info 92.3 PH. That's the handle on Facebook. You can watch, listen, and drop your comments. I'll just quickly go over to my guest now. Honorable sir, so you must have heard it. I just want us to go straight into it. It's something you must have heard. But then if you missed it before, maybe from the FCT minister, you might have heard in that broadcast he had where he said a lot of other things, one of them including he wanted an outright removal, which got people also thinking when he said he wanted. And the question was, well, isn't there a process as to how this works? So if you want, does that mean we have to make it happen? All of that came. But what even was a major conversation for people was the fact that he described the emergency rule as the president's tactics or way of saving the governor. What do you make of it? Well, because you were in the government at the time before the suspension.
I want to sincerely thank the Almighty God for this opportunity. Thank God we're in the season when we're talking about the resurrection of Christ, our Savior. The issue of state of emergency is covered in our Constitution. It's in Section 305. But the contention is that there is no provision that allows anybody, even the president, to remove an elected governor and members of the assembly. I remember clearly that Section 11.4 has already addressed that issue. It has said that under no circumstance. That is the contention. It is not to say that state of emergency is strange to our laws. No. It's the removal of the governor and the assembly members. That is the contention. And that's why there's a public outcry. From constitutional lawyers, even to laymen, they all know that what was done was overreaching a decision that ordinarily shouldn't have been there.
So do you agree then that, well, the move was the president's way of averting an impeachment, which the FCT minister was almost very sure that was going to be successful and was going to happen?
I don't have the clairvoyance to know what was going to happen in the future. If I know anything, I know that the matter didn't get to the threshold where state of emergency should have been declared. Talk less of removing a governor elected by Rivers people and members of the assembly. I didn't think it was. I think it would have been too hasty. What was done was very hasty, but let me even assume that that's how God wants it. But the criticisms that have come from everywhere clearly shows that we didn't get it right.
But do you think that if we did not have the state of emergency as we have now, and then the governor got suspended, do you think that the assembly would have been able to start an impeachment process and maybe eventually the governor would have been impeached?
I don't see in the future. I cannot speak what would have happened in the future. We're in trying to see how to resolve the judgment of the Supreme Court. We made several efforts to do what the Supreme Court asked us to do. Recall that we wrote several letters. We physically visited the assembly. We tried to get the assembly on our side, to the table, to be able to discuss. And suddenly, the state of emergency came.
So how do you then describe the comments? Because the point is, from how an impeachment works, the conviction that the FCT minister and a lot of his supporters, including some top political figures, feel that, what the president did was to avert an impeachment that what they felt was surely going to happen if things had continued. But then there is also the argument that following the first impeachment threats that were made that led to the meeting with the president, and then the president said withdraw cases and all of that stuff that happened, and then that was after we had the situation at their chambers. The assembly members at that time had continued to sit. There are those that argue that if they really wanted to impeach or was sure that it would have been done, they could have possibly had gone ahead with it. There's that argument. There are also those that said, okay, with all that happened, and then we had the Okojo-led house and everything before eventually the Supreme Court judgment came, and then we had to recognize the Matamele-led assembly and lawmakers. If they still wanted to impeach, they could have gone ahead with the process, but that did not happen. And then we have the impeachment now, that the state of emergency that came with the suspension of the governor and lawmakers. But then there is a talk that the president did that because perhaps he didn't want the governor to be impeached, which is what I wanted us to get clear. So now that we are where we are, do you agree that it was a tactics to avert the impeachment, or from what you know about how an impeachment works, is it something you feel that, perhaps by now, if we didn't have this emergency rule, the governor could have been battling impeachment with the assembly members?
Were there indicators that there was even impeachment? The truth of the matter is that up to the time the state of emergency came, the impeachment is a process. Starts from a point to another point to another point until it gets to the governor. He is served. Then the CJ, the chief judge of the state, will empanel a committee, and then all that will start. We didn't see all those ones. It never happened, even though that's part of the precursor to impeaching a governor. Now the question is, if you were to impeach, what could have been the offenses? If they outline them and it's weighty enough to empanel a committee, then we'll begin to talk about impeachment. In this case, there was nothing on the table. All I'm just saying is that we're still in the political disagreement, trying to see how to effectuate what the Supreme Court had asked that the governor should do when the state of emergency came. So I didn't see anything going to the processes that would have warranted the assembly to say we have started the impeachment process.
So you're saying that they were not really even going to do that?
I didn't see it. But if the FCT minister said he didn't want state of emergency, wanted an outright this, you must put something on something now. You can't just put something on nothing. That's the point I'm trying to make.
So what? But do you then feel like the state of emergency rule became an alternative to the impeachment?
State of emergency, as I know, at least up to the point President Goodluck Jonathan declared one in the north, I think in 3 states. What they did was to increase the security presence in those states. The governor still functioned, did the administrative work. But in this case, a lot of things were contrived. They said there were explosions, human beings were dropping on the road and all that. And you and I know that those things were just the imagination of those who live in Abuja. It never happened. So to just remove the governor, bring a military administrator, and then you're running a martial government. Then you say you are putting administrators at the local government. Everything looks strange to me. All the things that are being done are strange to me because the Supreme Court in July last year had said there is no other leadership in the local government other than an elected government. And the Supreme Court said the elections that we had in October didn't follow due process. and had asked that we redo. And the state assembly, the State Independent Electoral Commission were there trying to put their acts together. Suddenly, state of emergency, the administrator came, dissolved even commissions that are statutory. I'm not talking about boards. And then you have put some people there, and these people were declared by the assembly. You can't put the wrong thing on nothing and anything that it will stand. The chairman of Justice Elebeli, that was the chairman of the dissolved SIEC, they were screened. Members of that commission were screened. These ones that you have put, are they screened? The answer is no. So it tells you that there is a power of attorney handed over to the administrator for which he had come to execute according to what is specified.
The argument is that because state of emergency, and clearly in the Gazette, he is not, his modus operandi will be quite different from if he was an elected.
Three things were asked that I remember what the things that were on the Gazette. One is that there was going to be a committee of eminent Nigerians. Two, he should administer the state, and whatever he wants to do, he must clear with, in the first instance, the Federal Executive Council,
but then
the National Assembly also came. My worry is that when National Assembly is in it, why wouldn't he get clearance from the Assembly? But he's acting, and it was obvious that they were to have met last weekend, I think on Thursday or so, before the Good Friday. That meeting didn't hold.
We'll take more of your comments after the break, but let us know what you think. The emergency rule, some say it became an alternative way of suspending the governor because an impeachment could not work. What do you think? Let us know in the comment section.
Pastor, what's your reason? What's your reason? Oh, everybody gather round. Come and hear the news in town.
My name is Ifeemi Andrew. Our conversation continues here on the Morning Crossfire. The question on Facebook still remains, do you think, you agree, the FCT minister had said, well, the emergency rule in Rivers State that also brought about the suspension of the governor saved the governor from impeachment. Do you think it really saved the governor from impeachment? Or are you with the school of thought that think that, well, that became an alternative because an impeachment couldn't have worked? Let us know what your thoughts are and what you think about all of this politics that a lot of people still putting around what's happening. Well, you can't separate it. The suspended Commissioner for Information is with me in the studio, Mr. Joe Johnson. Has been saying quite a lot. If you missed it, you can get on Facebook and watch it all over again at Nigeria Info 92.3 PH. You can just go back and watch the whole thing to hear some of the things he had said from the first half. We'll now move on to more questions before we come over to the phone lines. Meanwhile, on Facebook, several messages coming in. This one says, anybody that is surprised with what is unfolding in Rivers with regards to Solo Administrator isn't familiar with Nigerian politics. It's always like a movie. The actor is meant to interpret the script that is given to him by producers or the directors. That's exactly what is happening. Chidozie Amadi said, looking at the judgment of the Supreme Court, they said there was no government in Rivers State. So with that, the assembly had what it took to remove the governor, which would also bring me to this particular part. Tango W says, Andrew, to impeach and elect the governor is not a day's job. I've said it before and I will say it again. Nobody can take the place of God. Chidozie Amadi, okay, we took that already. What does it take to impeach a governor? What's the process like? So it starts with a written allegation of gross misconduct against the governor, which must be signed by at least 1/3 of the members of the State Assembly and presented to the Speaker of the House of Assembly. That, many would agree, is very doable, could work, especially when you look at the situation with the Assembly and the relationship. Politically, some people might argue that will work. But step 2 says, within 7 days, the Speaker of the House of Assembly is expected to serve the state governor with a copy of the notice of allegation. Now, this is another part of it. This serving, we all know how Nigeria is. You might say you sent and you did not get. In fact, let's take a look at what happened between the governor, the commissioner is laughing, and the assembly members. You know how serving went both ways and nobody got it. Nobody saw it. So that would be another delay.
The social media saw it.
On social media, they had their point. But this was what it was. And that could last for, let's say, another month or so, because you then have to go to court, and court will now say, oh, substituted means, and so on and so forth. So if you, by chance, get over that, step 3, the governor has a right to reply to the allegation leveled against him. The state lawmakers must be served each with a response from the governor back to serving again, because this one might also go back and forth, which will take another while. Step 4, within 14 days of the presentation of the notice, the Speaker of the House, they shall resolve by motion without any debate whether or not the allegation shall be investigated. Now, let's also bring us to step 5. The motion fails to get to thirds, the process shall be halted. If the required vote is met, then the Speaker shall, within 7 days of passing the motion, request the Chief Judge of the state to appoint a panel to investigate the allegation, which I'll pause and then bring up this question about rumors we saw on social media, because we needed to know if it's factual about the Chief Judge at the time saying that he was offered bribes, monies, and all of those, but then he refused. Did that happen? Was that the Chief Judge speaking, or did somebody write that on social media?
I wouldn't know. I don't speak for the judiciary. I speak for the executive. But the truth of the matter is that there was a seeming disagreement between the judiciary and, the Chief Judge. At some point, we read that the House of Assembly had already filed a petition against the Chief Judge on age falsification, to the extent that I heard that it was supposed to be the responsibility of the NJC to do that, not the Assembly. So I would assume that there was a seeming altercation between them.
But you're not sure if what was said was what it was?
I have no facts to that.
All right. So it means that you would also need the Chief Judge And then the chief judge is the one that constitutes the members of the panel and so on and so forth.
Yes.
And within 3 months, the panel is expected to report its findings to the State House of Assembly.
Yes.
And then during the proceedings of the panel, the governor shall have a right to defend himself or have the right to be defended by a legal practitioner. Then you go to step 7, where the allegations of gross misconduct against the governor cannot be proven. The impeachment proceedings shall end right there. Yes. And then at least 2/3 of members of the House of Assembly must vote in support of a resolution to be adopted, and the governor shall be impeached while his motion to swear in his deputy shall be moved immediately. That's step 8, assuming those things take. And then there are also other proceedings within the House of Assembly with regards to generating that motion and who signs and all of those things. That's within the House of Assembly.
So of all the 7 stages that you have mentioned, was there anyone that ever took place to say that there were signs of an impeachment?
Okay.
So now the argument is
the first threat was a notice sent to the governor. The governor. Okay, it was just the assembly that we just heard that they were going to.
Yes, they were. So this, if you have looked at the stages, assuming we did 1, 2, 3, 4, the signs will be there. There are signs you see in a woman, you know that she's pregnant. Even Christmas, there are signs you see, you know that Christmas is by the corner. Now there were no signs as to any impeachment. And suddenly, state of emergency came. And where we are, we're even confused whether we're in democracy or we're in military government, as it is in the state, as it stands now. In my opinion, I would describe it as a martial government.
So what then would you make of this position? It goes back to the first question I asked, from what we've said about impeachment now and all. Then the motion that's been moved as the state of emergency rule, constitutional as it is, then the suspension of the governor, which is the argument for many people and the lawmakers. What would you now describe as people saying that move is to save the governor from impeachment?
There was nothing. You are the one who read.
So then why is that there? That's what we're trying to
I
in
think
your
that,
opinion.
I think in my opinion that it was a hasty decision. Otherwise, there should have been those signs. Even when you want to do a surgery or do a cesarean section on a woman, there will be signs that the baby is alive or dead. There will be certain indices that should be before you to inform your opinion as to whether you want to do evacuation or you want to do a CS and all that. The point I'm making is that I didn't see any sign of all the 7 or 8 points that you have mentioned that leads to impeachment.
But then, were there any signs of or acts of that you would see as gross misconduct in the time that you think would even warrant?
You will list it now. When you say gross misconduct,
there
you
are
list
arguments.
it.
Some people say the budget. Some people say. I think the budget is the major.
The issue of the budget is already decided by the Supreme Court. Supreme Court said go and represent or go and present the budget to Amehule-led assembly. We wrote to the assembly. We indicated the date to come, even time. And they said they didn't get that. The governor wrote another one, which he personally signed. The first was signed by the SSG. The second and the third were all signed by the governor. And we made our incursion, we made attempts. We went to the assembly, keeping to the date. And before the 19th, which was the last day we were to have gone to the assembly, on the 18th of March, the state of emergency was declared.
So what about the budget for the year before? There was also that.
They didn't. That one is gone now. You can't talk about budget that had already spent. We're talking about 2025, and it was timely because if you were talking about it in March, you are on course. The point I'm making is we were to present. We wrote to the assembly, and the letter was acknowledged. We agreed to go to the assembly on the 19th. When we failed to see them on the 17th, we now asked for 19th, and on the 18th, you dissolved the entire government. So what else would anybody do? Even the assembly that the Supreme Court said, go and present to, are no longer also there.
Okay. That said, I'll put one more in. So I'll go to the phone lines. Lots of questions coming in. A lot has been happening recently, especially with the protest for and against. But I would like to ask about this. In all of this, the suspended lawmakers have been quite quiet. I mean, most of the protests had only hinged on the governor coming back and the governor not coming back. That's what you get from both sides. What about the lawmakers? Are you concerned that there are, almost nothing being said about the lawmakers coming back or even agitating about their suspension because, whether it's constitutional or not, or whether it's right or it's not?
I think it's a two-pronged thing. The protests that I've seen, a lot are asking for the governor and assembly to come. There's no way the governor will come without the assembly people.
Yeah, there are some that have said that.
They are conjoined twins.
There are some that have said that. Well, the assembly members, I think I spoke to one of the protest organizers who was a former deputy chairman, I think, for Auda West, if I remember, Auda East, if I'm remembering correctly. And she said, well, they would have also been protesting for the lawmakers, but then those that they are protesting for are not even in the country, in their opinion, and are outside and don't even seem like they are worried about the situation. So what's the point of then crying foul for them if they are not interested?
Well,
so it brings us to the question.
The subject of intersubjectivity. I would not even be able to speak on behalf of the assembly people, but I know that is one apron string that is tying the governor and the lawmakers. So if the governor returns, the lawmakers will return. And I believe that when they return, they will both return. I mean, the two sides will return.
All right. 0817-923-0007, 0817-923-0002 are the numbers to call. 0817-923-0007, 0817-923-0002. If they are to return, both sides will return. That is what has been said by my guest. Now, for you, the emergency rule, did it really save the governor from impeachment? Or do you think that it became an alternative, as some have described it? They say it became a move that was necessary, as an impeachment might have been difficult to actualize. Well, I've ruled out what is required for an impeachment to work successfully. And now, how many of those things you think were already in the bag? My guest says, when you look at it, none of those things were at play. The only thing we heard was what was in the news, that the assembly are moving an impeachment motion, but then the processes had not been put into play. Well, let us know what you think. The numbers are there on Facebook, several messages. I'll see if I can take a few more. The Solar Administrator is a good, SOE is a good one and should continue because everywhere is calm, and I hope all major players are having a factory reset so that this can end within 6 months. Akuru says, I support the second thought, but our governor and True Rivers people must be ready, as it seems like the current appointments done by the Solar Administrator making the state ungovernable when the governor returns. Chinedun Weke says, good morning, Femi. Weke should know that power is transient and stop acting as if he's all in all in the state. Posterity will judge us. Weke from Ichie, you sent that message in. Emmanuel, okay, this is Ibimina Brown. This one says, for me, I think it was a plan B by the FCT minister and co. Well, I think it's also fair to say the FCT minister did not declare the state of emergency. It was declared by the president, and he gave his reasons why he was declaring them, clearly spelled out. Did you agree with the reasons, or do you think reasons are reason enough? Or that's a whole different conversation. Speaking in this realm of speculations, that's where we came up with that, because in the realm of speculations, some people think it's a political move and we didn't need it, but it needed to be done for other reasons, which is why we're trying to get your thoughts about it and let us know what you think. And Yebet SCN says, impeaching the governor would have put the 27 lawmakers on the run because the sleeping dog would turn to a giant lion. Adaris Pief says, so it was really the FCT minister who's been sponsoring impeachment moves and still claiming he has no hand in it. Okay, I think you're referring to his comment about he wanted outright removal of the governor. Well, that comment is huge. What do you make of it? It wasn't really part of the conversation, but the fact that it keeps coming up in the messages, I would just have to ask, what do you make of the FCT minister saying he wanted outright removal? And people were uncomfortable with the part where he said he wanted.
He's entitled to his opinion now. There are 3 rights you have: right of expression, right to associate, and freedom, right to be free. So he's entitled to his opinion. I cannot interrogate it.
Okay. All right, we'll leave it at that then. Let's see. We'll start with Chima and Ada, George. Good morning, Chima.
Good morning, Andrew.
All right, go on.
Andrew, everything you have outlined that will lead to the impeachment of the governor shows that impeachment of the governor will not start and end in the floors of the state assembly. So which means the FCT minister lied when he said the president saved the situation. If the president indeed saved the situation, why are they jubilating? They were jubilating because they know that to impeach the governor is not just an easy thing. And there's something he did not mention, Andrew. After the panel had been set up by the chief judge, the panel must come out to say the governor is guilty before any impeachment.
That's correct.
You understand? They must conclude that and submit to the assembly to say that the governor has indeed committed impeachment offense. But if they say otherwise, it means that impeachment will be put to a halt. So if you look at the whole thing, you understand that the FCT minister is being economic with the truth. But it's unfortunate, Andrew. The only thing FCT minister will bring to a state that helped him, he never walked anywhere. He had held several positions because of this state. The only thing he could bring to us is state of emergency. Putting the state into this problem is unfortunate. That is the only thing he can bring.
Let's go to Nkoro now. Thank you, Chima. Point made. Ida is in Nkoro. Good morning.
Andrew, very good morning. When you have two children, they are fighting, and one cannot be able to fight the fight and reported to you support who is the winner of the fight. It's one. So one of them is too powerful for out of assembly than the former governor. You see, my brother, when people are talking about this impeachment, the governor seems to go over River State as a governor. River State is very peaceful, my brother. Investors are trooping in day by day. We are enjoying. People of us are enjoying. But for now, look at what the governor did. This period. Full administrator cannot do it. Under state of emergency, under suspension, the governor is feeding river people. He's not a good governor. That is the former governor to feed river people in this period. Those are jubilating that Jesus Christ died for our sins and resurrect. And my brother, governor was jubilating with his people. My brother, they say when the righteous go, the people rejoice. Our governor is bouncing back to finish his 8 years peaceful. And no man born of a woman can remove him.
All right, Ida, thank you. That's the much we can take. But let me also make us understand there are limits to what the sole administrator can do, first off. Second of all, according to the official gazette, those he reports to clearly are stated in the gazette. So there's, if you want to, what you should expect from the sole administrator, you find in the gazette who he reports to, who he gives accounts to, and all of that. And if you look at that gazette and you see Rivers people or Rivers State or a committee or this, then you can have the argument. But outside anything outside that gazette, unfortunately, there's little or nothing you can say about it. So again, let's have that at the back of our minds, that with the situation we're in and the capacity in which he's functioning, there are limits to the things he can do. So don't expect certain things. JJ from Rumigbo, good morning.
Yeah, Andrew, good morning.
Yeah.
Let me greet the commissioner in the studio.
Jay, good morning.
Andrew. You remember when Rocha Sokorosha was the governor of Imo State, when he tried to impeach his deputy? He was the one that sponsored that impeachment. It was like a battle, clash of the titan, before it succeeded. That's governor versus deputy. You remember, what's his name? The late governor of Ondo State, Akeredolu, when he tried to impeach his deputy, that didn't happen until they so rest in peace. You remember, because the process wasn't easy at all. Now the assembly, they just serve one paper. The next thing they said, they declare state of emergency that they want to impeach governor. The process, they know they cannot finish it. And why, the question you ask, why is it that people are not talking about the assembly? The assembly was the first to commend the president for declaring state of emergency. How do your inquiry? They were also the first to congratulate the sole administrator. That means they were so comfortable with what's happening, so why should you bother about them? It's just like Abiola. Abiola was the first to congratulate Abacha when he said he was fighting for his mandate, and Abacha was like, you were the first to congratulate me. Which mandate are you fighting for anymore? So for me, I think Father, forgive them for they not know what they are doing.
All right, let's go to Rumukuta. Chima is on the line. Good morning, Chima.
Hello, good morning. This is Mr. Ifemi.
All right.
And I greet your suspended commissioner. Mr. Ifemi, it is quite unfortunate that in this part of our country, we like dragging our straw. Now, the issue is that somebody has told you that what he wanted was an outright removal of the governor. It's only to be grateful or appreciable to the person that stopped it, that even tried stopping it initially from the ab initio. When you came with this your kind of concocted statement or one thing or the other, go to court, go to this, and it brought it to those levels, you don't even want to see, appreciate what is happening. Now, who told you that impeachment process cannot be possible? Because it was not being read like that. Impeachment is a process that is in the Constitution. You can't stop it. And let me make you understand, by merely ruling 2024 without an appropriation bill, it's an impeachment offense. It's looking to prison. So even if the chief judge set a panel, the panel cannot tell us that it is right for the governor to rule a state without an appropriation bill. Now,
all right, Chima, I think at this point I'll tell you, you would allow the panel to have done their work. You cannot conclude for the panel as well.
Not even got into the
you made your point. I think I've allowed you made the point, but you can't say that you speak for a panel that did not even come up. No,
put in place.
You don't do that now.
Let me tell you something. Daniel said, "I believe in book. I learn from book. I don't learn from emotions."
Okay.
We are talking about something here. They are telling you that impeachment process before the panel would have. No, I'm making you understand that whether you like it or not, the process would have taken place.
All right. Let's go to Bori now. Letambari, good morning.
Good morning, Ichimi Andrew.
Okay, go on.
Good morning to the resource person.
Good morning, my brother.
Thank you. For me, Ichimi, I want to say this bitter truth. For me, I see that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu also loved Governor Sim Fubara. Why did I say so? You see, from the first time when this whole issue came to the president, there was one critical area. The man bound the House of Assembly and he asked them not to impeach Governor Sim Fubara. Sorry, your guest mentioned how Goodluck Jonathan did when he was in power. I want to tell you that was a political style he wanted to use to get influence or favor from the Northerners. It's like giving akara in place of shawarma. What am I trying to say? That pattern of emergency rule does not exist. The man was trying to do something to favor him in future. But in the instance where there is an emergency situation, it means that the governor cannot be able to, combat the situation. That's why you need to be removed. But in this case, they suspended him and said, okay, until after 6 months, why not we wait and see how...
Nathan Barry, I think you got interrupted by your service providers. We're already running out of time, but you heard some of the callers and then you got some of the messages too. So let's quickly get your response, before we...
The last caller is turning it upside down. Jonathan leveraged on what happened to Obasanjo and Darie. Obasanjo removed Darie outrightly when he had his own opportunity to deal with issues in Plateau
State.
Yes. Now, the National Assembly then were not comfortable with that approach. That matter went through the courts. And the court ruled that no governor should be removed, just like you cannot also remove a local government elected chairman. So Jonathan didn't do it because he wanted any favor. Jonathan followed stricto sensu the law. And the law clearly states that if you say there is an emergency, all you need to do is beef up security, pump more security men. I've seen policemen at the state headquarters because there's no challenge anywhere. There's nothing to quell. There's no war. No pipeline is being exploded. Nothing is happening anywhere. So the people are just stranded here. That's the challenge that we have. The issue is 11.4 section 11.4 clearly states that you can't
go to commercial now. After the commercial, Honorable.
Are you a porter?